This is Dr. Tami Dean, and you are listening to the Equity Hour podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today. My goal is that as a listener, you leave with new ideas, resources, and actionable steps for your educational community. Let's explore how we can use our voices for equity and social justice today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Equity Hour with me, your host, Dr. Tami Dean. I am so excited for our season 2, and I am just thrilled to have our guest with us today. Today, our guest is Katie O'Malley. She's a career coach and workplace strategist with 15 years of professional experience serving the nonprofit, corporate, and education sectors. So since 2018, Katie has worked alongside more than 200 clients as the CEO and principal coach of Encourage Coaching, which is founded on a mission to elevate more women, people of color, and LGBTQ plus folks to the rooms where the decisions are made. I am so excited. Katie, welcome today.
Dr. Tami, thank you so much for the invitation to be on. And I am just delighted to be part of season 2 and can't wait for this conversation.
Me too. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Okay, so Katie, as you've probably noticed in each of the episodes, one of the things I talk about a lot is that equity is a journey, and it's a marathon, and it's not a sprint. So I would love if we could start, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of talk to us about your personal equity journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So Katie O'Malley coming to you live from the south side of Chicago with my 2 dogs.
This is where I say south side.
And I promise it is just as safe down here as it is on the north side of Chicago. So trying to spread the word. But geez, my equity journey, my social justice journey, honestly, if I were to go back all the way to when I was 5 years old, I think it started there, which, as someone who identifies and moves through the world as a white cisgender woman who came from a middle-class Catholic family in the suburbs, to think my equity and social justice journey started at 5 seems crazy. However, one of the things in terms of equity that was very apparent to me growing up was the difference in socioeconomic status across my family. Living in the suburbs, coming into the city to visit family, there was just difference and there was disparity, and really trying to understand and not judge that as a child, and having a mother that was, a single mom, raised 3 kiddos. This was even before I came into the picture, working 3 different jobs to try to make ends meet, right before she started living this different life after she met my father. And so having had her perspective from such a young age was really helpful for me. But I was also raised Catholic. And I will tell you, up until a certain age, there's some really good messages there that are all really rooted in social justice.
We're going to come back to up to a certain age.
I know we'll come back to it. So,
yeah,
there was that, and this idea of we're all, and I say this recognizing the color blindness that will come out of the statement. We're all the same, right? So we need to treat each other with every person deserves dignity and respect, and to live a full life. And it always just seemed so easy for me. And as I grew older, I didn't understand why it was so difficult for other people, especially as we started to come into our own social identities, personal identities, some of which have more unearned advantage and power than others. And I can remember, and this is probably why I started my career where I did in the political and nonprofit arena, just moving through the world feeling this immense sense of guilt all the time for everything that I had, and never being able to put words to it, which I later learned, white guilt, white privilege. But it wasn't until I hit graduate school at 30 that I actually had a vocabulary to describe why I chose the career path that I chose. I thought I've been given so much and now I have to, it's my duty to return it. And it's my turn to sacrifice in these ways and working, my gosh, working at the Innocence Project and then the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, helping folks who were convicted for crimes that they didn't commit, spending 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years in prison, sometimes on death row, and to see the stark contrast in the clientele. It was 99.9% people of color, men of color, right? Were our clients, and really starting to ask the questions like, how did this happen? No one covered this in college with me. What is
Yeah.
this? Obviously, there's a systemic happening. Now, this is 2004, 2005. So the literature is obviously there, but not something I had been exposed to. So kept doing the work in New York City. And then when I got to the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, a brand new set of lessons and learnings and understanding about the LGBT community and the struggles for equity that existed and continue to persist there as well, especially when we look at the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So I guess I could keep going, but I think to the question about my equity journey, so much of it is rooted in the choices I've made in my career. Really being willing to expose myself to folks that have had different lived experiences than me and not trying to come in as some, I'm going to mess this up, the white person on the horse trying to
The
solve
white savior.
white savior. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just coming in with cultural humility. Like I didn't know, and it wasn't my place to know. I was there to be of service and to learn. And through my time then in higher education, just seeing even the literacy of the academy and first gen students struggling to just not even make meaning for themselves, just make their way through the process of being in college and succeeding in college. It's a big reason why I created Encourage Coaching, touching all of these groups who I don't see represented in the C-suites or at the VP level, down to the director level. And as a woman, and this was really important, it was a really important moment in my graduate school career for me as I was, studying up to become a therapist, that the white guilt and the white privilege conversations with my professors, one of them reminded me, they're like, have you forgotten you're a woman? Like there is
Right.
in that too, which isn't to say, I had one professor, he's like, this isn't the oppression Olympics, right? You're not able to have these conversations because
Oppression in
right,
one way, but be privileged in
in
another way, in
right.
other ways. Yeah, absolutely.
That for me just opened up a little more space again to practice cultural humility, to do my best to understand, and then with the privilege and power I do have, try and do something about it. And for me, I thought growing up that was going to be in a very systemic way in politics and nonprofit organizations. And it turns out for me, it's more of a one-on-one, day in, day out job, working with folks to really get to a place where if they can't make change at a system level, they're able to do it for themselves. And I'll
Yeah.
pause there. I've just been saying a whole lot. I get a little nervous at the start of these, Dr. Tami.
It's, you know what? That's very normal. And most people do. So it's totally okay. I mean, you've said a lot of really great things. I think one of the things that stood out to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like you really approached this work from a space of curiosity in order to learn. And I'm wondering, like a lot of people, there's a noticing, but you're not quite sure what you're noticing until I say the rose colored glasses come off. And then once you've seen it and you've been made aware, then you can recognize it now, but also retrospectively. Do you feel like that's what happened for you when you think about these questions you were asking yourself when you were 5? Do you feel like this like light bulb kind of went off when you hit this work when you started
A
learning in
hundred
grad school?
percent. And a thread just came pulling all the way through, even looking at my own family system, right? So my mom, she passed away when I was 12, and then it was just me and my dad, and that has its own set of
Mm-hmm.
lived experiences that come along with it. But I can remember everybody praising my dad, right? Oh, to raise a single daughter who is
Right.
like, or to raise a daughter as a single parent who's approaching her teen years, and you work full time, and you have to then go home and get her to her activities and make sure dinner's on the table. And oh, you showed up to one of 20 soccer games. Good for you. And I remember patting him on the back too, only to look back and be like, wait a minute.
Right.
If mom were here, there wouldn't be any of these accolades. And truth be told, I made dinner for myself 7 nights a week. I found rides to my activities because you were working and couldn't make it happen or didn't want to make it happen because it wasn't the social norm. Yeah, and I remember writing about that in a paper, and it was just so, I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I became almost righteously indignant about things in a way
Yeah.
that was not helpful. Part of the identity development piece. Like, now that I know this and I can't unsee it, I'm going to make sure everybody that I come into in contact with knows and sees it also. Not
Mm-hmm.
recognizing the decades of work it took me to get there.
Yes. Because once you see it, it's like, I need you to see this too. And that is also part of a journey too, is recognizing everyone is not in the same position as
Right.
you are with their learning and understanding. So, how do you meet people where they are?
Mhm.
That's so interesting about your dad, just for so many reasons. Patriarchy comes to mind,
Of
how
course.
men are like, it's even, I think about when they say dads, even in coupled relationships, where they're like, are you going to watch your kids, or are you
Are
babysitting
you
your
babysitting
kids?
this weekend?
Right? Those are, this is this man's children. He's not babysitting. Like, he's a parent involved, but it really does speak to the expectations,
Mhm.
like the systemic societal expectations that are placed on women, whether they're in a coupled relationship or they're by themselves, versus when a man is by himself versus in a
Yeah.
coupled relationship. Just that the power of the narrative that exists in the society.
Absolutely. And it's $300 trillion a year of unpaid labor that women do in households, in offices, in their communities. We keep the economy, all economies running, and it's thankless.
That's insane. Can you just
300
say that?
trillion, 300 trillion worldwide.
Interested in learning more and getting a customized plan for you or your educators? Sign up for a free connection call with me, Dr. Tami, to discuss your personalized plan. The link is in the show notes. I'm very rarely speechless, but here I am. Like, because in my mind, like I know it's a lot. Because even in, you're in a corporate setting, they look to the female to take care of certain things or be the
Take
care.
notes, get the lunch catered.
You can plan this event, right? Even though that has nothing to do with the scope of your work. Just because maybe I don't like planning events, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I like to host parties and plan events and all that stuff, right? Like, oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
wow. And then people wonder why us women are talking about pay equity and everything else. Holy cow.
Support with childcare. Are you familiar with the fair play method, Dr. Tami?
I think I've heard of it, but please remind me, and let's remind the listeners too, because they
Yeah,
may not know.
so a brilliant woman, her name is Eve Rodsky, was like, men are not taking up their fair share of work in the
Hmm.
home, whether it's related to the house, the organizational system of the home, the economy of the home, the children, wrote a book and developed this methodology called the fair play method, which really helps to de-escalate the, how do I say this? The fragile ego sometimes of men when you point out the things that aren't being done or could be done better, and almost gamifies how do we make sure labor is fairly distributed inside our family system and inside the household. And it comes with a set of playing cards, and what's so brilliant about it is you lay all the cards on the table and it has all of the different chores, responsibilities that have to happen in a home to keep it running, and have to happen in a family system to keep it healthy. And the woman takes the cards for what she currently does, the man takes the cards for what he currently does, and what you inevitably see is this irrefutable evidence in front of you about what's happening. And then the men can say, you know what, let me help you. I get it now.
Do they yell Uno when they only have one? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Oh, but what a visual representation. Right? I'm like, Uno, like, is everyone?
And then you talk through, like, here's why I take these tasks, or here's where I think I could benefit from you taking this and me taking that, or it's because resentment can build up on the side of the man as well. Why am I always the one who has to take the trash out or the snow or whatever it happens to be? And so to really kind of de-escalate what can be a very difficult or anxiety provoking conversation inside of a couple.
Yeah, I would imagine that opens doors to communication about expectations that you may have that you come into a relationship with just because of your own family structure, like those unwritten, right, or unspoken expectations that tend to happen in a partnership where you're placing it on your partner, like, but you should know that. And the partner's like, but how should I know that? Because I don't know that you've ever told me. But because it's just part of your worldview, right? Mm-hmm. You don't even necessarily think, or we don't always think to verbalize or communicate in a way that makes that known. So that's great for that. And it kind of eliminates that, I'm going to say, stereotype of, the nagging, right, female in the relationship. Like, why don't you do this? I need you to do this, right? Like, gosh, I could have used that when I was married. I'm not married anymore.
I'm about to not be married, Dr. Tami. I am at the tail end of a divorce.
Well, I've been divorced since 2006, so I'm totally cool. I don't think the cards would have helped us, unfortunately. But
they did not help me.
Well, you know what, though? You tried, and that's all we can do, right? You tried your best. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. Okay, so I don't know why I want to say this, but first of all, the Innocence Project just speaks to my heart because, stereotypes and bias. And I was actually, so I'm a true crime junkie. Love. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Love true crime. I think it started way back when, as a kid, I started reading like Nancy Drew, right? And mysteries. Oh, you're a Nancy Drew girl too?
I did not like to read, but I would read Nancy Drew all day.
I love it. Snaps. Like, this is how old I am. I would look forward to going to the bookstore to maybe talk my parents into buying me another hardcover, the yellow hardcover at B. Dalton, which doesn't even exist. And probably half these listeners don't even know what that is. But it was a bookstore like Barnes and Noble, but it was in the mall at the time, right? So anyway, yeah, true crime junkie. I was watching Netflix. This is what I do for enjoyment. My daughter always jokes that, like, am I like researching? And I'm like, no, I just find it really intriguing. Like, what are these people doing? But I say all this to say how serendipitous that this weekend I was just watching the Netflix documentary around the Innocence Project.
Yay.
Yes. And it was highlighting all of these cases where junk science around bites and bite marks on humans, like, incarcerated all of these men. And some of these men, like you were talking about, they were almost all of the people in the show were black men, black males, right? Mm-hmm. And they were on death row, or they were being incarcerated for like 30, 60, 45 years because of this junk science. And I just think that this is one of the things that I don't know that everyone thinks about, right? Is the systems are designed to keep certain power structures in place.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the ways it does that,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. And when I was working at the Innocence Project, gosh, Dr. Tami, when I started there, we had, I think, 24 folks, not including the legal interns, the
Mhm.
second and third year law students. There were only 4 staff attorneys for 1,500 cases, and the letters, they never stopped coming in. And it was me and my boss, Audrey, raising the money for the organization.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I got to go off and do a little bit of communications work and research work around policy issues like junk science, especially related to arsons and fires. There's just so much of it, but the number of folks who go away on whether it's junk science, false eyewitness identification, false confession, coerced confession, there's so many elements that you just never think about. And I remember the statistic at the time was the conservative estimate is that 1% of folks currently serving time in prison for crimes where there is DNA evidence are innocent, which means there were close to 300,000 innocent folks in the prison system. And that's the conservative estimate. The real estimate is more like 3%, which
Right.
just do the math on that number then, right? So it's horrifying. And to know that there's the Innocence Project in New York, almost it's like the flagship, right? So you have different
Right.
projects attached to universities and law schools because there isn't enough attorney power for folks who have already passed the bar to take on this work or money. And
Mm.
then the challenge, Dr. Tami, and this is something that I'm so glad the Innocence Project started doing. Once they're out, then what happens? It's like the after Innocence Project, right?
Oh, well,
You're
yeah.
you're coming out and there's from state to state, there's no federal policy around lawful convictions. It's left up to the states. So
Mm.
in Montana, back in 2007, if you were wrongfully convicted and incarcerated, they would give you 4 years of free tuition at a state institution. In the state of Maryland, you got a bus ticket to go wherever you wanted to go, and then whatever you came in with, right? Which just to demonstrate the differential between and then other states offering financial compensation, but most not, because you don't want to even admit the wrongdoing to begin with. And so
Yeah.
then came the fundraising efforts for how are we going to help folks reintegrate when they are coming out without family, without friends, without new skills, technology that's just advanced leaps and bounds from where they were. It's unbelievable. And again, just these were just cases where there was DNA evidence.
Do you know, and just out of curiosity, does that number, because I think about the number of people that take a plea to
Mhm.
not risk the trial because of the harsher sentence possibility. Does that number include people that take a plea? Do you know?
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious if you knew because that's also interesting, right? So this makes me think. So there's a few things. I feel like I'm threading this together. Being curious leads itself very well to coaching
Sure.
and what you do. But then also we've been talking a lot about like systems that are in play and structures and privilege, right? Because there's a privilege to be able to afford a very good attorney so that you don't end up in this
Mhm.
situation. And not everyone can be afforded that or the publicity or whatever it is. Because who knows why a story gets captured in the media because it's not equitable.
Well, we know why it doesn't, right?
Yes, we do. So this makes me think of maybe this is a little bit about why you do and what you do at Encourage Coaching with the people that you work with. So I would love us to talk a little bit kind of
Sure.
like how, all of these things led to where you are now, which I love because my own path was not the path that I thought it was ever going to be, and here I am. Because if you would have told me when I graduated, well, one, a podcast didn't even exist, but if you would have told me something like I'd be doing stuff like this, I'd be like, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. But here I am. So, tell me more about the why around Encourage Coaching and your mission and what it is you do. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. And I think at a very kind of simpler foundational level, all I've ever wanted to do is make a positive impact in the world. That's it. And so that thread, super clear, it goes right through. But when I decided to go back to school, I was 30 years old. I had left the political and nonprofit arenas because I needed to make some money because we live in a late stage capitalist hellscape and it just is the way it is. And so I transitioned from working at the AIDS Foundation of Chicago to going to work in commercial real estate. Now,
Okay.
had I visited with a career coach or career counselor before making that move, they might have said, Katie, we think there could be a values discrepancy here worth investigating. But I didn't do that, right? It's 2009, 2010, and still coaching is relatively new in
Hmm.
you. And so it was during that time that I wasn't getting to use my strengths on a day-to-day basis. I wasn't aligned with what the work was or the purpose of the work. And to top it all off, it was a very toxic work environment for me, right?
Hmm.
So the systems that you were just talking about on full display. I think there was one person of color that was a broker in the office. Anyone who was a woman was basically an admin of some level. And
Okay.
we would just get crapped on all day long. And it was hard, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it. Started to internalize it as I'm bad, I'm wrong. I guess this is where I'm stuck for the rest of my life.
Oh, that's not a good place to
No,
be.
not
Oh.
a good place to be. And this is so yeah, 2010, 2011. We're hardly talking about mental health at that time, much less mental health in the workplace and what the employer responsibility is to keep their staff healthy and well, ultimately providing them dignity and respect on a day-to-day basis. And I ended up having to take a medical leave of absence from work, which was also very new for something that wasn't physical. I can even remember HR being like, but you're fine, right? And I'm like, yes. And I can hardly get myself out of bed in the morning. Like I wake up crying. This is not normal. This is not okay.
No. And I mean, I'm not an HR expert, but I'm pretty sure that, that is
It
not.
was new. People were not taking mental health leave of
Oh,
absence.
yeah, we have come a long,
We've
long way,
come
thank God,
a long
around
way in the
that.
last
Yeah.
12, 13 years. And, I ended up going into an inpatient hospitalization program. It was so severe for me. And when I
Oh,
came
wow.
out, I was like, I can't heal in the environment that harmed me, but I also need to work. So I will work and I will set a goal because I know I can't this isn't a Katie specific issue. Feeling like I did everything I was told to do from elementary school on forward, and this is it. Like this can't be it. And so it was then that I decided I'm going to go back to school and help people at the intersection of mental health and work. I'm going to become a therapist because I also at that time didn't recognize or didn't work with helping professionals that recognize the client as the expert on their own life. So every time I would say, I think this medication's doing more harm than good, it was, you're just really depressed. Let's increase the medication. Or,
Mm.
what you're feeling it's not logical. So let's start thinking in a different way. And I'm like, also not helpful. Like,
No, I- unfortunately, I can relate with that. I have had that invalidating experience. I just told you this about my life and my experience.
which was
And you,
vulnerable enough.
right? In this particular instance, it was recent.
Oh, geez.
But anyway, I was like, you've known me for like 30 minutes. Like that invalidation. And I think, oh, that's so hard because, therapy is wonderful. I'm a huge advocate. Go to therapy. I go to therapy. Go to therapy if you need it, right? Like it's super helpful. But it's not helpful when you come across people that invalidate when
Mhm.
people are trying to be vulnerable and share. Because that's
Yeah,
hard. You're right. That's hard enough to be
it's
vulnerable.
it's hard enough. And to say it out loud, this is how I'm hurting. This is how bad I'm hurting, even with the support of antidepressants, therapy twice a week. I'm taking fish oil and like I'm doing all of the things. And now you're telling me I'm still doing it wrong. Like there's got to be a deeper issue for us to explore here. And it takes an average of talking to 3 different therapists or counselors before you find your match. So for folks who are listening, if it doesn't work with the first one, it's okay. Doesn't work with the second one, it's okay. Try a third time. That's probably going to be your person, but don't give up after the first one.
Yeah, that's great advice.
But yeah, so got into graduate school, was the oldest in my class by like what felt like 100 years. Most folks were right out of undergrad, and here I was with my 8 years of professional experience, feeling like the mother in the room. But what I learned pretty quickly during my studies was that insurance companies are not keen to cover conversations about work because work is not a mental health diagnosis, even though work leads to burnout and the symptoms of burnout are identical to anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, but work is not a mental health condition. So it was at that point, I'm like, I'm going to finish the degree and learn the whole skill set, but then I think I want to operate as a coach. I want to be helpful for folks with what they need. And it seems like they're not allowed to get that in therapy. And so tried to cut it off at the pass, working in higher education. Let's help people figure out their strengths and values now before they go off into the world so that they can hold true to that. And it was wonderful. I loved the work. I never wanted to leave the students. I just wanted to leave the politics of academia. So spent some
Well,
time,
I left academia too, so
yeah,
love my students.
love
Absolutely.
Love. Spent time at DePaul, University of Texas at Austin, Chicago Booth. So 3 very different institutions. But the one thing they all had in common was it is a very elite segment of the population that gets to access the services at that school, much less the career and leadership development services offered in something like an MBA program, right? And so I was like, I love this work and it's so meaningful and transformative for the students, but shouldn't everyone get to have access to this?
Right? Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so that's where Encourage Coaching came from. So after spending 5 years in higher education, I was like, what if I got an LLC, put up a website, just see if there's any interest from folks. And in 2018, started with one client. They had a great experience. They are a member of the LGBTQ community. Next 2 clients, it was the same, and it continued to grow in that way. And so now primarily getting to work with women, people who identify as LGBTQ, folks who identify as a person of color for any number of races, ethnicities, or identities, and got to leave my full-time job in 2022 because it turns out if you do what you say you're going to do and you care for the people you're doing it for, you can be a pretty successful business owner.
Yes. Snaps. I love that. I love that because you get to stand in your purpose, your passion, and in your values. I think one of the hardest things is when there's a misalignment of your value system with the space in which you're trying to do work.
Mhm. Mhm.
I can say for me, but I don't think I'm alone in that.
You're
But
not.
I don't want to speak for anybody else. It really is very challenging. I can speak for you, so you said. Oh, okay. So I love the snowball effect of clients, because I really do believe people recognize and know when someone is sincere and honest and, you know, the authenticity of yourself, I think always speaks to the authenticity of someone else. It's one of the things I think when we show up as ourselves, we give people freedom and space and trust to show up as themselves too.
Yeah, it's an invitation. I'm doing it. It's a little scary, but if I'm doing it, you can do it with me, and then it'll be less scary because we're doing it together.
Absolutely. And you're not going to be alone.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So tell me more about what are these people looking for when they come to you for coaching? What is it you help them do?
Yeah, so it's typically one of two things that individuals come to us for. They either are looking to make a career change because they're working in a toxic work environment. They never really considered. I have so many clients who come to me saying, Katie, help me figure out what I want to be when I grow up. These are folks that are 25 to 55. There's no that question never really expires, I don't think, for
It
folks.
doesn't. I ask myself that all the time. People, I'll be like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but that's just because I find something else that is totally intriguing and enjoyable. So let me do it.
This is what we're here to imagine possibilities and explore. So, for folks who are trying to get out of a toxic environment, it's how can we help you better tolerate and make this environment more tolerable until we can get you someplace where you can thrive. For folks that are looking to make a pivot, what is it about your strengths and values set that doesn't feel, to your point, in alignment? That's a big part of work that I do
Hmm.
with clients. But then there's also folks who are looking to re-enter the workforce. They took a break, predominantly women, they took a break to be mothers, caregivers, and it's just the world has changed so much. Help me understand LinkedIn. I left 10 years ago and now it appears this is where people find jobs, but how is that even possible? It's just another social media platform.
Right.
It's both tactical, but it's also highly personalized. So definitely taking a data-driven or evidence-based approach using assessments like the Hogan assessments, which are based on the Big Five personality, kind of like the gold standard in the field of psychology for how we understand human behavior, and help folks understand, here's how people experience you. Is this your intent? Because if it's not your intent and it's not how you want to be showing up every day, it's just how you've been trained to behave professionally. Let's figure out how you do want to show up and what you do want to be known for. Or if this is, how do we get really in, who is it, Dolly Parton, figure out who you are and do it on purpose?
Yeah.
How do we put words to all of your strengths and values to really spotlight those to a prospective employer and create as much alignment as possible? So that's one camp of folks. And then the other camp, people who they're like, nope, I'm good where I'm at. I know I'm in the right field. I'm on the right path. I just can't get to the next level and I can't figure out why. And that's when we'll come in and do some leadership coaching. So, people call them soft skills. I've taken to calling them power skills because there's nothing soft or easy about moving through conflict effectively, giving feedback in
Hmm.
both a candid and compassionate way. These aren't simple or easy things to do. So leadership coaching is a big part of that, really focusing in on self-awareness, because until we can lead ourselves, we can't lead anybody else. But
Oh, snaps for
no,
that.
right?
Yes.
But bringing
Yes.
it back to the top of our conversation around equity and systems, a lot of the time I'll be looking at these situations and just say, this has nothing to do with you. This has to do
Mm.
with the system or the environment that you're operating in. And you get to make a choice now about whether you want to stay and continue to fight and advocate for yourself, or is it time to maybe look in a different direction and land yourself in a place where you're going to get rewarded instead of punished for who you are. And that's those are the hard conversations that sometimes come up. And then if
Hmm.
they choose to leave, me following up with the employer being like, do you all need any help with workplace strategy, culture, employee engagement, and retention? Because boy, do we have some great services for you. So coming in then at that systems level, either for a team or an organization to try and figure out what's going on.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You're like, well, my coachee has decided to move on, but there is an opportunity here to help this not happen to someone else. How powerful. I can't remember the exact words you said, but the idea of being valued and respected for who you are in the
Mhm.
space that you're in.
Yeah.
And that is what we all really deserve. And I don't know that people think that they deserve that in their workplace.
And then we can have a whole conversation about family systems and upbringing and why we've come to feel that way. But
You know,
I said this too. When I was working in commercial real estate, it was a toxic environment for me, for the
right,
people, not for everybody. It couldn't have been for everybody who was there, or there wouldn't be a company anymore, right? And
right.
so what I've really taken to is let's figure out where you're going to get rewarded instead of punished, get
Mm-hmm.
you there, because we can't solve the system-wide issue, especially if you've been broken and beaten down. Let's get you somewhere where you can thrive and figure out how to make this possible for others.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yes. Speaking like my love language right now, because, to me, that's like what is for you. And you feel peace with it. And not everyone's going to understand your decision to make a change because maybe from the outside it looks like this opportunity is the best opportunity. Everyone thought I was absolutely insane when I left academia. And, you know, I had turned down at one point a tenure track job or I left, but it had nothing to do with the tenure part. It had to do with what was right for me.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's my biggest advice from this right now, y'all. Like, entrust your internal compass and your gut and yourself because you only are responsible for you. Other people may have a different perception, but they have a whole different life experience. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to make sense to them as long as it makes sense
Yeah.
to you. Right. And so, in these big decisions, right, like I had just this peace, even though all these other people were wigging out, peace.
Mhm.
Right. And that is a very powerful place to be. And it really sounds like the work you do is trying to help people get to that space of peace in themselves with where they want to go with their career.
Yeah, it absolutely, you articulated that so beautifully. And I can remember and working with a client, but this comes up a lot in session, them saying, but Katie, I like the work I'm doing. I don't want to be a VP. I don't want to be in the C-suite. I just want to do the work, but I feel like that's not okay. I'm like, it is absolutely okay. But let's look at all of the different dimensions of our well-being, right? Is this because you're comfortable, or is this because this is what really brings you peace? That's because we're comfortable doesn't mean something's good for us. We can be comfortable with a very chaotic nervous system, and that doesn't mean we're thriving.
Yes.
Part of that, you walked away from academia. I did too. My family thought I was crazy. How can you leave one of the top institutions in the world to just run your own business? And 3 years later, I'm now merging my business with another woman-owned small business, and we're going to be $1 million business this year.
Woo! Yes.
I never thought those words would be coming out of my mouth. And it's because I aligned fully with my strengths, talents, and values, found someone to partner with. It's messy, it's hard when you've both been operating as solopreneurs, but it's better already for the both of us and the bottom line. And for me, for a long time, I, going back to this idea of guilt, I always thought money was bad. If I had it, I would be bad and it would corrupt me. And finally starting to realize money is just a way to demonstrate the impact that you're having. And once you
Mhm.
earn it, you can reinvest it in the business. You can create a foundation for folks who are unable to maybe afford the services that you offer and get those fully funded through a scholarship. You can give to organizations instead of giving up your own sweat equity and your own livelihood through nonprofit
Mhm.
work to do that. I don't know how I got here, Dr. Tami. but it felt like an important thing to say.
You know what? I absolutely believe it's an important thing to say. I follow some really amazing women that have launched businesses or help women launch business. And I repeatedly see them saying, like, there is somebody out there willing to do what you have the skill set to do and are doing it in a mediocre way. So
Mhm.
have the confidence, right, to align with what you can do and put your skill set out there. And like, you never know. And I mean, I'll say this too. I think people think that women like you that have run a business or me and this podcast, I think sometimes they think like it's without fear
Oh no.
or right or there's no question, right? But I'm gonna tell you right now, that's totally 1,000,000% false. Like absolutely all the time. Am I doing this right? What am I doing? But you move forward even in the uncertainty because you don't need to know everything today, right? No one knows everything in any moment, and you just get better with it over time. Like, so if you think about whatever career you started when you first got out of college, you didn't know exactly what you were doing day one, but you were better by the time it was, year two or by the end of year one. So, same thing with it. So, have the confidence of someone who's mediocre or doesn't even really know what they're doing and they're out there doing it. So just go do it. Or I could just say, like, what is that one phrase? Like, have the confidence of a mediocre white man. I feel like I can say that because this is my podcast, so I can say whatever
Sail
I want. But,
forward. Sail forward like a mediocre white man.
or there's a joke, right, about the guy, like the middle aged white guys that think they can just land a commercial jet airliner. Have you seen that?
Oh my, no.
Yeah.
Is
Like they
this a
did some
thing?
poll. Yeah. And they're like, oh, yeah, I could totally land a commercial jet. Sir, no, you cannot. You cannot. But okay, I applaud your confidence. So
But
I'm just saying,
is it confidence though? That to me
uh,
is
that
arrogant.
might be arrogance.
Yeah.
Right. So go out with confidence, not arrogance. Right. So confidence is knowing, like, to me, because I love coaching. I love to coach. I love having a coach because I think it is so important, right? To have someone who can help you see maybe the things you're not willing to see yet about yourself and give you that guidance and direction. Almost a lot like a therapist, but in a little different way, right? So I love coaching. I think everyone needs a coach. It's super important because it helps us grow. And if we're not growing, we're standing still.
Mhm. And growth can be slow, just 1% better every day, like out of the book Atomic Habits with James Clear.
Oh,
My
yes. Habit
mantra,
stacking.
habit stacking. Oh, yeah, I've had a summer of habit stacking. It's been awesome. Oh, oh, or the idea forward is a pace. You don't have to be fast all the way back from when we were kiddos. We know the tortoise wins the race, right? Steady, consistent, just keep doing it. And over time, it's just like for me, 6 years later, when I started out, I was terrified. What if everybody laughs at me? What if folks are like, who is she to even attempt something like this? Much less when I chose to leave my full-time job to pursue this passion project. What is she? Who is she? What is she even thinking? And the tipping point between exhilaration and anxiety was it's a razor's edge still every day, but I choose exhilaration. Um,
Mhm.
and that energy keeps me going.
I love that. I love that. It's also like some freedom for you. And I know entrepreneurial type business isn't for everyone, and that's okay too. But it's where do you find that in the space that makes sense for you? I love that. A razor's edge.
And I was never going
So
to find
true.
it being in the employment of somebody else. I would, if I needed to, go back into the workforce as a 9 to 5er if I had to. Do I ever want to do that now that I've experienced this for myself? Absolutely not.
I can't imagine you would. just, I just can't. It yeah, it's
What about
powerful.
you?
What about me?
Yeah.
What are you asking me
Oh,
exactly?
would you go back?
Well, I still work a 9 to 5.
I can't believe I messed that up, Dr. Tammy.
Oh, it's
You're so
okay.
good at this. I thought,
Thank you. Is my ultimate desire is to work for myself and to do the things that I know are important and essential because equity work has been a part of my journey for a very long time and social justice has been a part of my entire career in one way or another. And I would like the freedom to have the conversations that I need to have with the people that are wanting to make the change and are interested in making the change to get the change to happen. And I've never been one to minimize my voice around this topic for the comfort of others. It's funny because when I was working with pre-service teachers and I taught social justice courses and a lot of my courses had that just culturally relevant pedagogy and all those things infused into it. And, I would often get this question, well, what do you do in a school district when it's counter to these beliefs or what you believe to be right and true about what people deserve? And so I would always have to say, what I do or what are you going to do? Because those are two, right?
yeah,
Those may be two different things.
absolutely.
I personally am a woman of strong faith. And I believe when I stand and am talking through truth and honesty and speaking for what is good and right for people and caring about people, that God's always got my back. And he has. So I won't not use my voice, but that may not be for everyone. So you need to figure out what is the way you can use your voice or your actions or your agency to support in the way that makes sense for you in this moment.
Hmm.
Right?
There was there a moment where you knew this is it. This is my calling. This is my life's work.
Oh, yes, actually. I've always been a little bit around like women's rights, and I was always just very much about rights and things in high school. But as far as my career goes, I read Dream Keepers by Gloria Ladson Billings as an undergraduate student. And that book is like what just completely flipped the switch for me and was the trajectory of this work and the importance of it. And it really has informed, it's like the backbone that's informed everything of it. Oh, I get a heart. I love it. Yes, I wrote about it. I talk about it in one of my episodes. I think it's like Meet Dr. Tami. And then, but I wrote about it too in like my dissertation. My dissertation was a narrative. So I really believe in the power of story. So in my introduction, I talk about my story and it starts with this book, kind of the introduction. So books are powerful. That's why we can't ban them. Okay, that was my plug for that. But that's why people want to ban them because books are powerful because they bring knowledge. So, but support not banning books. Okay. Didn't plan on saying that, but here we go.
Well, and there's last year, gosh, it would have been in October. One of my friends is on the board of a local library, and it was National Don't Ban Books Week. Like, I can't,
Okay.
but they had a fundraiser for the library, and it was brilliant. And I can't believe we're still having these conversations about banning books.
Yes, it's actually a very small percentage of the population that is going around getting these books banned throughout the United States. And I can't remember the percentage now off the top of my head, but I'll have to look for it and put it in the show notes, y'all, because I talked about it on a previous episode because I had just read about it on that one and I've slept since then. And, you know, I'm 48 now, so my brain doesn't work like it used to. Okay. Okay. We've talked about so many things, which
So many
I
things. We could probably
love.
transition into menopause from here.
We could and women's rights and all the things. But I also I want to really talk really quickly because
Okay.
I think this is super exciting because one, I have 8,000 million Legos at my house because my son is an avid Legoer. He's going to be an engineer. Surprise. But let's talk about play
Yeah.
because, right? adults, we need to play. Everyone needs to play. There needs to be joy, right? Because we don't want to do it like there can't be joy 100% of the time. And don't people misquote me on that, right? But we need to have joy in the things that we do if we want to keep doing them. So just
Mhm.
like you were talking about earlier, like if you're miserable every day that you're going to work, you are not your most effective. You are not really doing what you need to do. But you do some work with Lego Serious Play, and I want people to hear about what this is because I think it's super cool. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so Lego Serious Play, my gosh, all of this came about because, first of all, I don't know if a lot of people know this. Lego is a family-owned company, and it still is. But back in the 90s, no one was playing with Legos. Kids weren't playing with them because kids weren't playing with them. Parents weren't buying them. And Lego was at risk of going under. And they said, hey, we got to solve this problem if our family-owned company is still going to be around in the aughts.
Yep.
So let's try and solve this problem using our product. And as we know today, we have Lego Lands, Lego Movies, Lego Kits being sold for an upwards of $500, full on Lego stores. They're not even in defunct Toys R Us or whatever, like its
Mm-mm.
own shop. And all of that got solved because what they've realized is that so many great ideas were never being shared because there wasn't trust in the organization, there wasn't collaboration in the organization. Folks were very siloed and just out for themselves. And what they were able to discern is that through the lens of psychology, if ultimately our ideas are very personal to us. So if someone doesn't like my idea, they don't like me. So am I going to
Mm-hmm.
raise my hand when the CEO is sitting at the table if I'm unsure about my idea? Absolutely not. However, if I can externalize my idea from myself, if I can build my idea and hold it up and point to all of the different elements so it makes sense and I don't forget it because the visual is right there. Holy cow. Well, if you don't like this, it's just a bunch of Lego bricks and I can disassemble it and try again. So, what ended up happening was not only were people building all of these great ideas, they developed a methodology where you start breaking off parts of people's ideas to create something greater than what would have existed if you just built by yourself. And so, what I love about this, and this is what we use when we come in and do systems work with
Mm-hmm.
teams and companies and organizations, is everybody gets to the table, everybody builds, everybody shares, and when we get to the end of solving this problem, because it started off as a problem solving methodology,
Mm-hmm.
we're not here to select the best idea. We're here to select elements of everybody's idea so that we can all get behind the vision that we're going to be moving forward with, whether it's for a product or a process or a mission. Everybody had a hand in literally building this, and you're left with an artifact of it that you can always come back to. I love it for that. I love it for building trust. Working with clients, we'll typically do this in a 1 or 2 day format. So
Mm-hmm.
the first part is all about let's let's have you build a building that was meaningful to you in your childhood. And people start crying in the first exercise because what they start revealing is, you know what? My grandma's house was a meaningful building to me when I was growing up. She would cook this Sunday sauce and they would like start telling stories about Sundays growing up, about their loving and brilliant grandmother. And so different than if you're at a retreat and someone says, so tell me about a core memory from your childhood, right? Like you're not
Yeah.
going to open up and share that, but suddenly you're talking about this set of Lego bricks and it feels safe. And the connection that unfolds from the team building piece that we do is what allows for that really collaborative solution to unfold in the second part of the day. It's so like it's people are like, really, we're gonna play with Legos for 6, 7 hours. And at the end, they're like, when are we doing this again? This was the best day ever.
Oh, I love that for just so many reasons because it gives voice to everyone, right? the idea that the collective solution is more important than the one person or this piece. So we each have our own value that we bring to the
Mhm.
table. And yeah, no one likes to answer those weird questions because you're like, I don't want to share that with you. I don't know you like that, right?
Yeah, but look at this cool thing I built, and I will open my entire soul.
And I didn't even know I was going to do this,
That's
right?
and that's what people, holy cow, how did you, it's magic. It feels like magic.
Oh, that's so amazing. I love that. I love that. And I love the visual representation of we went through this process and this is what we ended up building together, right? Like how powerful, because oftentimes you might have a systems or a strategy meeting where you're trying to, come to this solution and looking at stakeholders' perspectives, and it's a piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
It's a document or words. And when you work with a lot of documents all day, it can lose its worth of the time put in. So that's kind of cool. That's super cool.
And documents less fun, less playful, less joyful than Legos.
They are less joyful than Legos.
Unless you step on them barefoot, which I have to do in my office.
Man, I mean, I really do have thousands and thousands of Legos in my house, but yay for Lego. I love that. I didn't know they were still family owned. So that's also super exciting. That makes me feel better when I buy sets that are ridiculous amounts of money for my children. I'll never forget, my son has the Death Star. Yeah. Oh, see, that's the reaction everybody gets, right? So he had saved and saved and saved his money.
Good for him.
Yeah. And when he was a little boy, he was like 9 or 10, saved and saved. So we lived in central Illinois at the time. So I lived in Bloomington Normal. So we drove up to the Lego store in Chicago so he can go buy it. And this grown man, so he buys this set, right? He's carrying it out. He's so proud, right? The box is almost as big as he is, but this grown man was like jealous and in awe of my son getting the Death Star. He's like, did you just buy that? He was like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Is it still?
It's it's still there. Like it's on display, and he studies aerospace engineering now. So now he's got all the like space thing. There's a whole. We have collections upon collections up that are still built in his house. So, but I digress because Legos, so fun. Okay, Katie, this has just been absolute pleasure talking to you. I feel like I could talk to you for 2 more hours, which, my listeners may not appreciate that, but I mean,
always
I would
come back, Dr. Tami.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that because, we got a couple things we started that we couldn't really finish up. So we might just have to do that. I do love to end with a tip for the listeners of something that you want to leave with them to think about or do as a part of their equity journey and work.
Oh my gosh. I mean, for me, it's, and I'm sure I misstepped a few times in our conversation today, and it's just having the courage to know you might misstep, you might get it wrong, own it, learn, and just keep moving forward. I think that's it. Just be knowing you're gonna misstep and accepting that from the start, I think is one of the best ways to approach an equity journey, because you're not doing it from a place of maleficence, but it's the ownership and accountability part for when you do that makes all the difference.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Katie, for joining us today. And listeners, make sure to check out the show notes. I will get you links so you can get in touch with Katie at Encourage Coaching so you can connect with her. And I will talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us. This wraps up another episode of the Equity Hour podcast with me, your host, Dr. Tami Dean. Make sure to check out the show notes for any resources, links, and next steps from today's episode. Head on over to Instagram and give us a follow at Dragonfly Rising LLC for more tips, resources, and opportunities to connect. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, intent is not enough. Action is necessary. How will you use your voice today?